I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Buxton Board of Appeals, and we have an agenda tonight. So first of all, I'd like a vote to call the meeting to order. All those in favor of opening the meeting at this time, raise your right hand. Second thing on the agenda after the call to order is public hearing. It's for Corey Hamilton, who's applied for an administrative appeal for a decision by the code enforcement officer who issued a permit to 18 Fountain Street, repairing an existing structure. So one of the things the Board of Appeal does, besides grant variances, is hear administrative appeals, where somebody questions the decision by the code enforcement officer. In this case, the person who issued the administrative appeal or requested it is Corey Hamilton. Is he in attendance? Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to hear from Corey first, and if anybody wants to talk to us, we ask that you go up to the podium. Please refrain from talking from the audience. If you disagree with something somebody's saying, wait. We'll give you plenty of opportunity to go up there and talk. And what I'm going to ask Corey to do is to go up and simply explain why he asked for the appeal, and then stay there if you would, because we'll probably have questions. No questions from the audience, unless they ask me if they can address the applicant, and then we'll do that at a different time. After that is done, you may sit down, and then I'm going to ask the code enforcement officer to come up and explain why she gave the permit. Is the person who got the permit in attendance? Okay. If you want to speak at some point, we'll let you. So all you got to do is request it, okay? All right. So if you would go up there first, Corey. And please explain why you took this action. Thank you.
Great, so my name is Corey Hamilton. I'm a lifelong resident of the town. I'm here tonight to appeal the decision, basically based on the fact that I believe the code enforcement officer lacks the authority to issue this permit.
I just got one quick question. Are you in a butter?
Yes, I'm the direct neighbor. The structure is probably 2 feet, 3 feet maybe off of my property line.
Okay.
And the reason why I think I have a pretty good understanding of it is I've been a state of Maine certified law enforcement officer for 15 years. During that time period, I'm also trained as a municipal prosecutor. I was allowed to prosecute cases that included code enforcement, anything all the way up to Class C crimes in the state of Maine. The first thing, like I said, is I believe that she's overstepped her boundaries there. She does not have the authority to do so with this permit. The section that she is using to explain why she gave the permit is under the non-conforming section, and she has zero authority under that section whatsoever. The code enforcement officer is never mentioned in there, and it clearly states multiple times that only the Board of Appeals may issue a permit under that section. How far do you want me to go on this? Because I've got a dozen different things that she's...
Whatever you desire.
I didn't know if we were going to go down one thing and then...
No, you should state your entire case. You can come back up at a later time if it's necessary.
When I first spoke with the code enforcement officer, she stated that the building that was in question was in fact non-conforming due to the setback requirements. She stated that the non-conforming structure would need a variance, which she didn't think that they would be able to achieve because there were 4 criteria that needed to be met apparently. I didn't look into that all that much, but took her word for it. The non-conforming structures, again, come under the sole authority of the Board of Appeals as stated in the charter for the town of Buxton under section 3.02. I have a hard copy of that on hand if you'd like me to read it, or if we're just...
No, I'd like you to read it. As long as it's, not
Yeah, it's
four
somewhat
pages
brief.
long.
So under the administrative organization, under Article 3, it goes down to 3.02, the appointed positions. The Board of Appeals. There shall be a Board of Appeals consisting of 5 voting members with staggered 3-year terms. The Board of Appeals shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Voting members shall elect their chairman and secretary. A majority of the Board of Appeals shall constitute a quorum. No action of the Board of Appeals shall be binding or valid unless adopted by a majority of all board members then holding office. The Board of Appeals shall have the power and authority set forth under Maine law, and in addition, any other powers or authorities set forth in any zoning ordinance or other ordinances adopted by the legislative body of the town. Chairman shall submit a written report to the municipal offices included in the town.
Okay, that, I can speak on that. That talks about our duties. I didn't hear anywhere in there it says she cannot issue permits for non-conforming lots.
That's in the other section here. So this was in the charter. So the section that she is using to justify her issuing of the permit, this is where piles of stuff here.
That's okay, take your time.
So in the Buxton Code, Article 4 is the conformance with regulations. Conformity. All buildings or structures hereinafter erected, reconstructed, altered, enlarged, or moved, and uses of premises in the town of Buxton shall be in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance. No building, structure, land, or water area shall be used for any purpose in any other manner except as permitted within the district. Such building, land, structure, or water is located. 4.2, nonconformance. The purposes of it. The intent of this section is to regulate non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. The section intends to be realistic so that non-conforming vacant lots of record can be reasonably developed, non-conforming existing structures can be properly maintained or repaired, and non-conforming uses can continue or be changed to other less non-conforming uses or to conforming uses. When we're down into the general, 4.2C1, which in her letter that I just received this evening, she says she does not believe applies. It says continuance, enlargement, and reconstruction. Any use of land or any building, structure, or parts thereof legally existing at the time of the adoption of this ordinance or any time the district is changed by amendment hereafter, which does not conform to the requirements of the ordinance or its amendments may continue, but may not be extended, reconstructed, enlarged, structurally altered, except as specified below, after approval of the proposed change by the Board of Appeals. An expansion shall not exceed 30% in the first use prior to the expansion. Board of Appeals, in reviewing an application for an expansion, shall determine that the proposed changes are consistent with all applicable standards contained in Section 8.2, Articles 10, 11, 14 in this ordinance. In reviewing the application, the Board will follow the appeal procedure contained in Section 6.3 of Article 6, including the provision for a public hearing. The Board may approve application with such conditions as it finds necessary. Now, in the state law, for building permits, it states that the building inspector, code enforcement officer, will be responsible for building permits unless otherwise stated. It's clearly otherwise stated within this ordinance that the appeals board has that authority. I have the training manual that she would have received when she had to get certified for it. It clearly states in there that not every ordinance is going to apply to them and that they need to know which ones they're allowed to enforce. Just like as a police officer, you can't enforce every single rule and law out there. There are certain ones that we can and we cannot. She's cherry-picked certain sections of them to avoid all the other conflicts that are in there. And I've got several more there that she's just going over and selecting that one. But in that section right there, there's several other sections here within the conformity and nonconformance where it mentions Board of Appeals, Board of Appeals, Board of Appeals. It never gives her the authority to do so, and it must give her the authority. That's state law. She must be given the authority to do so. If she's not given the authority, it's null and void. The Board of Appeals is given the authority on this. And let's see. So again, that section 4.1 that she's referencing there, 4.1A. All buildings or structures hereinafter erected, reconstructed, altered, enlarged, removed, and uses and uses, the premises in the town of Buxton shall be in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance. No building, structure, land, or water shall be used for any purpose in any other manner except as permitted. So clearly stating that any building erected, reconstructed, altered, enlarged, moved shall be in conformity, which it is not, because it is 2 to 3 feet off my property line, and adding to it is not going to make it in conformance. It's going to make it further out of conformance. Right here, the CEO is using 4.2C3 as her reason that she approved it. I have a text message from her as well, where she said that is her sole reason for approving it. That was the whole section. And if we read that, 4.2C3, restoration or replacement. This ordinance allows the normal upkeep and maintenance of non-conforming uses and structures, repairs, renovations, or modernizations which do not include expansion of the non-conforming use or structure. Such other change in non-conformance, use, or structure as federal, state, or local building safety codes require. Except within the shoreline zone, areas special flood hazard as established in Article 3.3, any non-conforming structure which is hereafter removed, damaged, or destroyed may be restored or reconstructed, provided that a permit is obtained within 1 year of the date of the removal, damage, or destruction, and will be located within the original building footprint. It will not create or expand any non-conformities. Reconstruction or replacement of a non-conforming structure not in compliance with these limitations may be permitted, provided that such reconstruction or replacement is in compliance with setback requirements to the greatest practical extent as determined by the Board of Appeals. Again, no mention of the code enforcement officer in there, except it does mention having to meet the setback requirements. It also talks a lot more than just repairs and renovations in there. It says that this would apply to buildings that are damaged, removed, destructed, basically. And the repairs that they're listing on that are far beyond what you could consider as a repair and normal upkeep. A repair would be to repair something back to its original state if something is broken. Some of the repairs that are listed are adding a slab, cement, concrete slab, overhead garage doors, windows, insulation, electrical, who knows what else. Now, the backstory to that is they wanted to originally use that building to run an automotive repair shop out of. 2 feet off.
Excuse me, who's they?
I'm assuming your son, his oldest son, Mr. Dusto's oldest son.
So a previous owner, is that what you're talking about?
No, he lives with them still, correct? Yes. So he lives with them still. So he was planning on having an automotive repair business out of there. So all those things would go along, obviously, quite well with doing that. So now that they're saying that they're just going to store some agricultural equipment, landscape equipment in there, $12,000 at minimum worth of repairs to do that. That's not repairs on the building, that's worth, who knows, maybe $3,000? I don't know what the,
Excuse me, what is this structure?
would you like to
I'm
describe
asking,
it, Chuck?
no,
or-
I'm not, I'll ask him later, I'm asking you.
He described it to me as a pole barn in the past. I
I mean,
believe
wait a minute,
Lori's
wait-
father may have built
No,
it.
excuse me. You said you live right next door to it.
Yes.
I'm asking you what it is.
Okay.
Just tell me what it is.
It looks like an old pole barn shed type thing. There's no doors on the front of it. It's has a metal roof on it, slanted, dirt floor on it.
Okay. Is it falling down?
No,
Okay. Is it being used for anything now?
they stored his lawnmower, maybe kayak, wood. I'm not sure what else is in
Okay.
there. The front of it faces his property, and I've never gone onto his property.
Okay. And what is going to be done there?
I'm not sure now.
Okay.
They're saying that
Okay.
they're going to store stuff. However, I have a letter from the DEP and from Ms. McKenna where they stated they were going to run a transmission repair business out of there, which would be illegal.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, I'm trying to get a feel of, other than what you've stated, is there any other reason why you're opposing it? Meaning,
Yeah, I think that eventually they're going to go right back to it. And in fact, his son was in the driveway saying that eventually he was going to do work out of it several weeks ago when he had one of his clients in the driveway purchasing or paying for repairs on one of the transmissions.
okay, so, and again, I'm not taking any position, I'm just trying to get clear. So do you think anybody has a right, do you think he should just let it fall in disrepair, or do you think he has a right to fix it up?
It's not in disrepair at all, so it's still in good shape, and minor repairs would be one thing, but pouring a slab, putting in garage doors, electrical, those aren't repairs. This is turning it into a full-blown garage.
But if the thing you just mentioned, electrical, concrete, is all within the existing footprint, you take exception to that too?
Yes, I do.
All right, I just wanted to be clear.
Yes, because I think that, I believe that when someone tells you they're going to do something, that I believe them and they're going to do it. And they've already stated multiple times, and they didn't change anything with their plans from the time it was going to be an automotive transmission shop back there to the time that they're going to store their lawnmower in it.
Okay.
Same amount of money is going to be put into it. They can spend the money however they want, I just don't believe it, so.
Okay.
I got a question. So, reading
Yeah,
over
make
all
sure
the-
you speak up. Yep.
Reading all the information that was supplied, what I got from it was you didn't have an issue with the permit being issued. You had a permit with the way the permit was issued.
Oh, no, both. So the issue with a permit being issued and the fact that she lacks the authority to issue the permit. So that was the first thing. I met with the Board of Selectmen back in early June, laid out my concerns. They brought her in, asked her some questions. She stormed off and refused to take any more questions from us then. I left. They then met with her again, and they asked her, because all of them were in agreeance with me that they needed to at least look this over with the town's lawyer, asked her to put in a stop work order. She refused to do so and then left. So they then called me back to give me the update and said that they recommend that I file the appeal on it, so.
In your information, you have written down something about they're running a business, they want to run a business out of that. Is that still part of the plan?
They'd have to answer that for you, but as far as I could tell, a few weeks ago, when their son was in the driveway talking to a customer, he said that eventually he would be doing work out of the back garage still there, so.
He said that to you?
He said it in the driveway. The driveway's very close. I was washing the car and I could hear him clearly, so.
So it was a, oh, sorry, go
Excuse
ahead.
me. Is that part of what your concern is?
Yes.
Feeling that it's going to turn into a business?
Yes.
Okay.
That they've stated their intentions to do that to Patty. In the original application as well, it's clearly marked that it was going to be commercial.
Do we
And then
have that?
She's not updated me with, she didn't give me an updated application. She said they emailed. I don't believe that's a qualifying thing that you can do. You can't email and say, whoops, sorry. She told them to change it from commercial, and then she would pass the permit through.
Do you go, you still got a question? You still got a question?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you know what this area, how it's zoned?
It's zoned for village.
Okay. And,
So either way, even if it was zoned for them to be allowed to, if they go 40 feet off their property and they're allowed to do it, then great. But this building is literally 2 feet off my property there. It abuts right up against mine, and that's why the big concern.
but businesses are allowed in village zones,
Correct?
and this was previously a business.
No,
No.
it was never
Never?
a business.
Never.
I'm not, Lori, did your father build that, or was it your grandfather, or? My friend's family owned where I live now since it was built in 1860 there. So I built it from them. So according to them, that it was Lori's father and possibly her grandfather that built it together on the property there as a storage shed.
Okay.
Where Lori grew up, there was another one that was an exact replica of it almost, right? The lean-to place back there.
Okay.
I'm
no,
not
that-
sure if they had,
That answers my question. Thank you.
but it was never a business, no.
Okay.
It's been an open-faced, no garage doors on it.
All right.
I guess, what is the big concern with them putting doors on? Because it does say in here that you can upgrade an existing building. I guess I don't quite understand what the thing is about them putting garage doors on and using it for cars or using it for equipment, whatever, but what is the big concern with
It's
them?
non-conforming structure, it's 2 feet off my property there, that's why. So if it was conforming, then great, and they wanted to convert it, but this is actually changing it. Right now, it is basically a 3-walled shed, and they're going to convert it into a garage, basically, which they're going to heat and cool. You don't insulate it unless you're going to do that. So everything you know, if I was prosecuting this case, yes, it's all circumstantial evidence. However, it all leads to the conclusion that this is going to be turned into something that human beings are working out of in the winter and summer, most likely on vehicles, which is, again, illegal.
Right, okay. So, but it's been a building that's been there for how long?
I can't answer that. 40 years, 50 years?
Probably more than that.
Okay,
It's been there a long time.
okay.
But the only thing that it's ever been is what it is now, and it's not fallen in yet. It's a well-built structure. Any minimal repairs that it might require certainly don't
So,
entail all of this.
When you talk about them eventually doing a business out of there, doing this and that, that's just, you're assuming that's what's gonna happen. You
Well,
don't
that's what
really
they
know
told,
for
that's what
facts.
they've told Patty, they told the DEP that, and so yes.
But we gotta be
Right.
careful here. Appealing the issuing of a building permit.
Yes.
And Patty will tell us what they're allowed to do under that building permit. I don't want to be worried about something that might happen in the future, but I understand your concern of that.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as there are garage doors on it, then you can't see in there, so I mean, and then what's gonna take place? I'll be able to hear it, all the noise and everything that's going on. I'll smell the chemicals that would be associated with that type of stuff. I also have endangered species. I'm a master falconer licensed, and I have 2 falcons on my property that would be very susceptible to that. One of them is worth $20,000. Those are very susceptible to that type of chemicals and everything. Those aren't that far off the property, so that's also part of the concern, yes.
Do you have anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, I have a couple more things actually here, so.
Okay.
Section 4.2E1, the nonconforming structures states that you may not add to a nonconforming structure unless it complies with the regulations or a variance is obtained. That's quite clear there. Again, nonconforming structure may not be added to or enlarged. Adding garage doors, adding a slab, adding everything else, unless it complies with the regulations, which it doesn't, or a variance is obtained. So this is all a lot of legal words and everything, and I know all of you are smart up there and everything, and this is why I asked that they meet with the attorney, which she basically flat out refused and stormed off during that meeting. I know that the town just spent $200,000 the last budget on lawyer bills and everything, correct?
They do tend to be expensive.
Yeah, so, and that's, all of the board members were hoping to avoid that with a quick, can we call someone, can we get someone in? No, it had to be rushed and pushed forward from her, so. I'm a taxpayer, everyone else in here is a taxpayer, I'm sure they're concerned as well. And I'm not sure if it was one of her actions that led to that increased bill last year or not.
No, it
but-
had nothing to do with it.
No,
That's irrelevant to this case. My opinion.
So last, one of the last main points as well, so is under the under Chapter 5, Article 5, under the administration, we have enforcement. Shall be the duty of the code enforcement officer or other person duly qualified and authorized by the town to enforce the provisions of this ordinance and any other applicable ordinance of this town. If the code enforcement officer shall find that any person in provisions are violating, it says he, shall notify in writing the person responsible for the violations. That's just talking about the enforcement of it. There's the building permit down here. Except as provided in section 5.5, no building or other structure shall be erected, moved, added to, or structurally altered without a permit issued by the code enforcement officer. In areas of special flood hazard, as established in Article 3.3, permits shall be issued according to the provisions of Article 14 of this ordinance without regard to section 5.5. No building permit shall be issued except in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance, except after written order from the Board of Appeals. Clearly, again, she's allowed to issue a building permit, a regular building permit. I have no problem with that. If it's a non-conforming building or structure, once again, we have at least the 5th time that it references the Board of Appeals in there. All building permits shall be void unless, well, again, with the provisions of this ordinance, except after written order from the Board of Appeals. All building permits shall be void unless the works commence within 6 months from the date of issuance a renewal of the permit shall be required if it's not completed with 18 months. So again, shows that she does not have the authority to issue building permits on non-conforming structures. It's quite clear throughout this. So a couple of the issues that are beyond the permit there, the CEO stated, had a copy of the permit where it's marked commercial, it's not allowed, and she just told them to change it over and she would approve it, and that's it. So that was, I don't believe you can just say, send me an email and do that, but that shows that there is a degree of trying to wink and nod and get it through there for them,
How
so.
did you find out about that?
She told me,
Well,
right to my face, that,
Okay, then she's not trying to hide it.
well, she may not be trying to hide it, but it may not be legal, is what I'm saying. That's why this needs to be reviewed. So you can say, hey, I just killed someone, but you're not hiding it, it's not legal though.
Let's not stretch this out.
No, it's just a reference, just like anything else. There are certain things, like I said, there's things that you can enforce and can't. And you cannot cherry pick individual ordinances. It must be applied fully to the law, the entirety of the ordinance. Just like with the safety seat regulations for children. It says that they can ride in a booster seat if they're between 40 and 80 pounds. If my daughter hits 85 pounds, can I take her out of the booster seat? No, because she's 7, and it has to be over 8 years old. You can't just say she met 85 and there it is. So each and every provision of an ordinance has to be followed.
But you must understand, I've been doing this a long time. Not everything in this is black and white.
That's why it needs to be.
It's very gray.
Well, if it needs to go to court, I'm quite sure that I'll win. However, I'm
Okay,
saying,
we'll see.
that's why I asked for it to be looked over by the lawyer, and that's it, which she didn't want any part of, and that's why I had to appeal it. All the Board of Selectmen were in agreement with me with at least look at it, let the lawyers look at it. There's no
Well-
harm in doing that.
No, and that's why we're here tonight.
Exactly, yep.
Understood.
Yep, so in closing, I'm not here to say that the Dustos are bad people or bad neighbors. I've never had a problem with them in the past. I've never really had the need to help them out with anything. He's pretty good at everything he does, quite a craftsman, and I don't think I've never really had to ask them for anything. I've talked to his son before about a couple of automotive things there. I've had no problem with him personally.
Well,
so
that's good you all get along.
nothing
It
against
really
them at
is.
all, so. The reason why I'm here again is, like I said, is that I believe that she is in violation of that, and I just want to make sure that the laws and ordinances that the town have are being followed, because this is going to set a precedent. And I did find one thing. An appeals board meeting was held on April 20th of last year. At that meeting, Mr. Levitt stated that the prior CEO thought that they could issue a variance related to setback issues, and Ms. McKenna stated that was not true. It was, in fact, incorrect. She stated herself that the CEO cannot issue any kind of variance or anything related to
But
setbacks.
this isn't a variance.
It's required to be, as she said.
This isn't a variance. This is an administrative appeal.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying that she's stating that the CEO cannot issue things on a variance
Right,
or
but in your appeal, there's no question about a variance.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. She told me they would be required to have a variance for it in order to do this. That's what I'm saying, whether it relates to this or not. So I'm saying
I
that
understand where you're
all
going
this
now.
stuff that she's saying that she can do, but however, a year ago, she knew that she was not allowed to be involved in non-conforming because it was a non-conforming case that you were taking up then. That she was not allowed to do anything with a non-conforming case there. So I'm not sure what changed in that year since then, but I guess that's the majority of it there. Happy to answer any questions there, obviously, and
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions for Corey? And we can certainly call you back up if we need to.
yep.
At this time, Patty, if you come up. And I'd simply like you to tell us why you issued a permit.
I would like to start with if a business may go there in the future. The application did say for a commercial use, which I cannot, it would have had to go to the planning board. So I could not issue a building permit for a commercial use. That property is on an aquifer, and an auto repair business cannot go on that property, which I informed the owners of I issued a stop work order on the business. I believe they understand they cannot have a business there. They emailed me to say that they want to repair this building for their own personal use. I have that in writing. I attached it to the application. I feel like I have the authority to review it as a residential use. So, they applied for installation. They want to add addition of a concrete slab, interior modifications, installation of interior walls to reinforce structure integrity, overhead doors, man door, and side windows, and install electrical service for their own residential use. Section 4.2 of nonconformance states the purpose of nonconformance. The intent of this section is to regulate non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. This section intends to be realistic so that non-conforming vacant lots of record can be reasonably developed. Non-conforming existing structures can be properly maintained or repaired, and non-conforming uses can continue to be changed to other less non-conforming uses or to conforming uses. When non-conforming uses fall into disuse, the intent of the regulations is to not allow them to be reestablished after a 12-month period of dormancy. These regulations are designed for the betterment of the community and for the improvement of property values.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
Did that building ever stop or fall into disuse?
Not that I know of. It looks in pretty, it's a pole barn, closed in on 3 sides, open with like
Okay,
bays on the front side.
okay.
I feel that section 4.2C3 that talks about restoration or replacement is the applicable section. It states this ordinance allows the normal upkeep and maintenance of non-conforming uses, structures, repairs, renovations, or modernization which do not involve expansions of the non-conforming use or structure. It goes on to talk about the shoreline zone, which doesn't apply, flood hazard, which doesn't apply. It does say any non-conforming structure which is hereafter removed, damaged, or destroyed may be restored or reconstructed, provided that a permit is obtained within 1 year of the date of the removal, damage, or destruction, and will be located within the original building footprint and will not create or expand any nonconformities, period. The next sentence says, reconstruction or replacement of a non-conforming structure not in compliance with these limitations may be permitted, provided that such reconstruction or replacement is in compliance with the setback requirement to the greatest practical extent as determined by the Board of Appeals. 2 different sentences, 2 different authorities, in my opinion. Section 4.2E says non-conforming structures, enlargements controlled. A non-conforming structure shall not be added to or enlarged except as provided in section 4.2C1 unless, and that's an important word, the addition complies with the regulations of the zone in which it is located or a variance is obtained. The structure is not being expanded to, this is my sentence, this structure is not being expanded to increase the nonconformity. I would like to give examples of things that the board would have to review if you were to agree with Corey's wording or interpretation of the ordinance?
That's only if we grant the appeal.
Correct. So, there are many camps around the pond that do not meet shore setback or other setbacks, which deem them non-conforming structures. The board would have to review and approve for those camps to be modernized the reconfiguration of rooms within the structure, the rebuilding of decks, the repair of decks, replacement of windows. If a camp that doesn't meet setback wants to modernize by adding insulation, that would have to come to the board. I've never heard of that. It is my understanding that the ordinance allows for the upkeep, maintenance, repair, modernization of non-conforming structures. As to not issuing a stop work order, when we met with the Board of Selectmen, the permit had already been issued. It was on June 11th, we met with the Board of Selectmen, or thereabouts. On June 11th, I had emailed MMA asking, giving a copy of the permit and all the supporting information. At that time, the selectman was asking me to revoke, actually, I think it might be Corey asking me to revoke the permit. This is their response. MMA Legal Services regularly advises that a CEO should not revoke a permit that was issued based on an argument, because an argument is brought challenging a CEO's reasonable interpretation or administration of an ordinance. These types of arguments should be resolved by appealing the CEO's decision to the Board of Appeals or court. Because revoking a permit can implicate the applicant's rights to the permit issued, a CEO should only revoke the permit if the CEO becomes aware of a clear and substantial error with their decision, such as if the CEO did not have any authority to issue the permit or the applicant provided information that was false and critical to the CEO's decision, and it's still within the appeals timeframe. In my opinion, based on the facts you have provided, it is not entirely unreasonable for a CEO to determine that they have authority to issue building permits that relate to repair, renovation, or modernization of a non-conforming structure that does not involve the expansion or reconstruction of the non-conforming structure. Town of Buxton zoning ordinance, section 42C and 42C3, period. However, because they wouldn't go any further, because I may be asked to advise the Board of Appeals on whether this decision was appropriate based on the facts, I will need to refrain from advising you any further. I think that is all.
Okay.
I just want to say a
Don't
variance.
go anywhere, we have questions for you.
A variance is not the same as this non-conforming.
Say that again?
In the last comments about a variance being, I don't have the authority to issue a variance.
Right.
I believe I have the authority to issue a building permit to repair a non-conforming structure.
Okay. So we have some questions. Go ahead.
Okay. In your conversations with the owners, after you had the conversation... In your conversations with the owners, after you had the discussion about the business, and you issued the stop business, did they give you, or did you perceive any indication that once this was done, that in fact was going to be turned into a business as it's been applied?
No, and if I find out that a business starts, I will be back to put a stop work order and enforce that they can't have a business there because of the aquifer.
Okay. Is this the first permit that you've issued like this?
No,
Okay. And have you ever had issues with any of the other ones that you've issued?
no, there's never been an appeal.
All right.
I want to expand on that question. Have you given out building permits for non-conforming lots before?
Yes.
In your career, about how many?
Oh, God. All the time.
Okay.
There's a lot of non-conforming structures because they were built before zoning. There's one right next to the food pantry that.
No, you don't have to,
But, I mean, there's examples.
I know the answer, I wanted to hear it from you.
Okay.
So in the process of them building, or doing the improvements, I shouldn't say building, because it's an existing building, they're just improving it. Will your office will be stepping in to make sure that they're forming compliance with the permit? That
Yes.
they're not going above? Okay. And then, once it's finished, do you have to do a final sign-off?
Yes.
You do, okay.
And it will be clear, I issue an occupancy permit on
Yep.
every permit, and when there's a question about the use
Yeah.
on the occupancy permit, I will put for residential use only.
Okay. Since I'm sort of new to this, when you say occupancy permit, to me, that means somebody's moving into it.
It's just it's an occupancy permit, it's the right to use the building
Okay.
on the permit that you applied for.
Okay.
That just tells like a bank that we did inspections, and that a final inspection was approved.
Right. And considering this building's been there that long, and they're not changing the structure, they're not enlarging it, they're just improving it, doesn't it fall like under some type of grandfather?
It is grandfathered, it's considered grandfathered.
It is considered grandfather, so they, technically, they can go ahead and make improvements to it as long as they're not increasing the size, as long as they're not tearing down and rebuilding a larger one, so it's just improvements, basically to improve the property. Okay, thank you.
I do, I'm trying to. So, may I ask, here in 42C3, you were talking about restoration or replacement. The first section of that, you were saying that that's part of how you based your decision?
Yes.
They fell within that. But then the second paragraph is saying reconstruction or replacement of a non-conforming structure not in compliance with those limitations may be permitted. In here, it's the addition of concrete. Is that an addition of concrete to make the area larger?
It's a dirt floor right now,
Yep.
and they want to put a slab under it.
Okay, but is that addition of concrete going to make it the same size as the dirt?
Yes.
And do we have the sizes here anywhere? Do we show what it is? Okay, up top it says 21 by 31. That's what it is currently? Am I reading that right?
I don't have the application in front of me, but yes.
But up at the top where it would say Town of Buxton application for building use permit, and so I guess, do we have documentation of what it is now and what it will be? This kind of adds question to me, that's why I'm wondering.
If they build bigger, they'll have to take it out.
Well, but it seems vague. I guess if we're going to be putting this information towards it, that's the reason why, it made sense to you to be able to allow this, how do you all make sure that it falls into that? Like, how do you know what it is now and what it's going to be?
Because we have assessing records that show the size of it,
Okay,
and I've been there to see it,
okay,
and I will be able to tell if it gets enlarged.
okay. All right. Restoration and replacement, and then it's in reconstruction or replacement. It just, I guess I'll just sit with it for now, but setback requirements. Is determined by law. I'll just have to sit with it for a minute, I guess.
So
Thank you.
If you read the first sentence,
Yeah,
restoration or replacement.
yeah,
This ordinance allows the normal upkeep and maintenance of non-conforming uses and structures, repairs, renovations, or modernizations which do not involve expansions of the non-conforming use or structure. That's within the reconstruction or replacement. It's the first, so it allows us to do that.
although it does change it completely. Like if I had a lean-to and I wanted to turn, it's almost like a lean-to turning it into a garage. It completely changes the idea of it. I'm just curious how that all fits in. That's why I need to sit with it, because I'm not understanding that completely.
Yeah, I have a question on that, too. Right now, it's a pole barn, and they're going to add walls and an overhead door. How, in your opinion, is that not making it more non-conforming?
Non-conforming talks about It's not a non-conforming use to have a pole barn or a garage on a residential property. So it's not a non-conforming use. Those are permitted uses. The structure is non-conforming because of setback, because it's too close to the side property line. That's the only reason it's non-conforming.
So you don't feel any question in your mind of turning a pole barn into a garage on a non-conforming lot?
It's not a non-conforming lot. It's a non-conforming structure.
Right, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So you feel as though you've done that in the past, and you feel as though you can, even though it's 2 feet from this man's property, you can take a pole barn, which is just somebody stored stuff in it, and turn it into a garage with walls, power, and a garage door 2 feet from the man's property.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that helps you any, but.
It does, thank you.
I think I had the same question.
It does. I just don't know if it falls into that first paragraph or the second, which is where I'm just trying to understand how that's it.
One other question. If we grant this appeal, do you issue a stop work permit? Or is it just understood they can't continue what they're doing?
They have a right to appeal your decision.
No, I know, but what happens with the work? Does it stop or can it continue?
It can continue
Okay.
until a
So
judge
really, what we
says.
decide is me.
Well, I mean, so if, this is what happens, if you grant this appeal and say that I didn't have the authority to issue this permit, there's an appeal period, it's 30 days, it might be 45 days, it's either 30 or 45, in which they have to appeal your decision.
Yep.
If they don't appeal your decision, then I issue a stop work order. If they do appeal it, they could, at their own risk, keep building until a judge says, no, that permit shouldn't have been issued, or yes, it should have been issued.
Thank you.
Any questions for Patty?
No.
Nope.
Do you have any further questions? Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask if the homeowner would like to come up and say anything.
This is structure itself.
Yeah, I'll let you look at it first. Just give us a minute to look at this, if you would, please.
Good evening. Thanks for having my wife and I. My wife Lori, she's been a...
What's your name?
My name is Chuck Dusto. Corey's a budding neighbor. Thank you, Corey, for the presentation. Thank you, Patty, for your support. My wife Lori, she's been a lifelong citizen, a lifelong resident of Buxton. We purchased her grandfather's house about 20 years ago to kind of keep it in the family. And we take, my wife and I have owned 2 houses together, and we take pride in our property, and I'm sure Corey can attest to that. We're very meticulous. Anything that we've ever done to our properties has not only benefited our property, but it's also benefited our neighborhood and definitely our budding neighbors. So the structure that you're looking at there was an existing structure built many, many, many years ago by my wife's grandfather. And as you can see right now, the structure over the years has really deteriorated to the point where we have to cover our equipment up in the winter to keep the snow and the rain off in it. Our intent was to turn one of the bays into an automotive, not an automotive garage, because that's not what my boys do. Both of my boys are automotive mechanics. My son builds high-performance transmissions, and he started his own little business last fall and was doing some of it out of our garage. And what we would have liked to seen, and we had consulted with DEP, we'd had a site visit with DEP, and what our desire was is to fulfill his passion of building transmissions. And he doesn't work on automobiles, he just builds transmissions and sends them all over the country. So after meeting with DEP and getting the stop work order from Patty, that very same day, my son stopped doing what he was doing in the garage, and I found him a place to rent off-site. So from that exact day when we were given the stop order to have him stop doing what he was doing in the garage, that terminated all of the thoughts and hopes turning one bay in that pole barn into an automotive garage is what people were calling it, but it was just going to be a place where he could build transmissions. So that's not even any longer on the table. We understand that. We didn't realize we lived on an aquifer. We do now. Our objective here is to just take that structure and bring it up to a more modernization look. We want it structurally sound. We want it weather tight, and we're trying to keep the birds out of it. Right now, it's a home for several pigeons. I've tried everything under my power to keep the birds out of it, but there's virtually no way to do that unless we make the structure itself weather tight and tighten up the walls and put a floor in it and an overhead door. My wife has a picture of what we would like the barn to look like. We would like to have power in it because I am a woodworker. I do like to do hobbies, and it would be beneficial to be able to run a power saw or a skill saw or a table saw down in the pole barn to build. Like I say, I do a lot of hobbies, but we do take pride in our property. And anything that we've ever done to our property, like I said, has not only improved our property value, but our abutting neighbors as well.
So this may not really be applicable, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you plan on doing in there?
Right now, we have all of our equipment, all of our landscape equipment, our lawnmowers, a lumber pile that I had stored in there. Everything is stored outside because we had started to do this project, and then when we got the stop order, I got the building permit right here that was issued. It specifies right on the building permit, not for commercial use, which we understood. We stopped that. I got my son a place to do all of that. So right now, our intention is to just enhance the back of our property, get it to look better than it is, to get it watertight, and keep the birds out of it.
Is it going to be used for the same thing it was used before?
Exactly.
It is.
It is. Yeah, it was used for storing our landscape equipment.
It's still going to be used for storage?
That's all it's going to be used for.
Okay.
And my son, like I say, the day I got the stop order for him to be doing what he was doing in our garage, and again, he used to be an automotive mechanic down in Saco. He decided to start his own little gig, which he's doing very well at. But once we got the stop order, that very same day, he found a spot to operate his business.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah.
I didn't think that a stop order was put in play.
I think he's talking about the business
Oh, okay,
Yes.
Thank
For
you.
the business.
that the son was doing.
yeah.
So on the application at the top, I think we talked about.
Move your mic closer to you.
I think we talked a little bit about this. The size it's listed here is 21 by 31. Is that the current size of the?
That is correct.
Okay. And is that size going to change?
No.
Okay. Are you doing the building yourself? Are you having an architect do drawings? How are you going to put the floor, the cement floor in and do the walls? Are you doing that all yourself?
I am.
Okay, just one more question on the size. How do you make sure that it doesn't go above that size?
Because I would have to alter the overall footprint of the structure, and I'm not doing that. Right now, if you look at those pictures I showed you, right now the walls, and that's the way they've been since my wife and I have purchased the property, 1.5 feet off the ground all the way around.
I saw that.
Every winter, we have to cover all of our equipment up because the snow blows in.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're trying to do is make this structure more cosmetic appealing.
Okay.
We're trying to keep it watertight. We're trying to keep the birds out of it. I do have a picture of what we would like it to look like.
I'd
As
like to
far as
see
the
that.
power goes, would like to have some lights down there. I'd like to be able to run a power saw or something along that nature. And again, If you've ever driven by my property, our property, my wife and I, you can tell what pride we take in our property. So, right now, this structure at the back of our property that we inherited from her grandfather when we purchased the property has really fallen over the years. We're trying to make it structurally sound. We want to make it watertight. We want to get some power in it so I can use it for not anything other than our personal use.
So the poles, it's a pole barn, the poles just go on the ground.
That's correct.
Okay, so if you're gonna add a slab, you're gonna add a footer.
Excuse me?
If you're gonna add a slab, you're gonna have to add a concrete footer.
I was under the impression that after talking to a concrete person that all I would have to do was add a 3-inch slab.
Okay, and it's gonna go to the inside of the
Yes.
interior walls or the outside of the?
It was going to
exterior?
surround the poles themselves so I could tighten up the exterior walls
Yeah.
and put a front wall on it
Yeah.
so I could get it watertight.
Okay, and the
Wasn't
slab,
gonna-
and the slab is not gonna go beyond the outside of the exterior walls?
It won't.
Okay.
I'm good.
Any more questions for the homeowner? John, you have any questions for the homeowner?
That picture, the finished picture, is just kind of a go-by. I mean, my wife and I, we've always been very meticulous when it comes to the upkeep of our property and what we'd like it to look like. And right now, this pole barn is not fitting into the picture. It's not safe, it's not watertight, it's not bird-proof, it's not animal-proof. That's the only thing we're trying to do here.
What happens in there now? Do you just kind of
Now
come and
it's-
go?
Nothing's happened in there long, it's completely empty, with the exception of a chop saw, I mean, a bench where we were going to start this. But as soon as we consulted with Patty and got the word from the town, we have not done one thing in there.
No, that's not my question. My question is, over the years, what is the
It's just been
activity
storage.
level?
It's just been
It's just been storage, okay.
That's all it's been.
So,
And I have done some small wood working down in there, because it's big enough where I can rip a piece of plywood.
okay, thank you.
But that's our only intention. It's not going to be an automotive garage. My son's not going to be doing work down in there. We are going to store our landscape equipment and some tools and some gardening equipment. That's the only thing we do with it. We would like it to look good. We'd like it to look similar to the picture that you have in front of you. But to me, that is only going to increase everybody's value, no matter where, within the neighborhood. I can't foresee somebody not wanting to see that instead of what they're looking at right now.
Well, some people have different,
Yeah, I understand.
you know, if something is 2 feet from your property, which, 2 feet from your property, and somebody's gonna change it, you could see why they'd be concerned.
I could understand that if I was changing it for the worse.
Maybe that is to the applicant of the appeal, maybe that is for the worst.
Okay, well,
Sounds like it is.
I mean, I guess
Right.
everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Can I ask him?
Ask who? Yeah, Corey, would you go back up?
Corey, ask him. Yeah.
Would you please?
Hi. So I'm wondering, you had a lot that you presented to us. My question is, so that I make sure that I understand, you're unhappy, you're feeling that these certain laws were not taken into consideration, for starters, right? That's part of
Correct. It's
your
been
feeling.
completely cherry-picked, which you cannot do in the state of Maine. If there's an ordinance written, you read it from the first sentence to the last sentence.
Okay.
There's no separate, like she stated, there's no separate sentences in an ordinance.
Okay.
It all applies or it doesn't apply, period.
Okay. And then the second piece of it is your concern of what may happen in the structure?
Yes,
Okay, based on prior conversations, okay.
I also have a couple of pictures too that I'd like to submit here and respond to a couple of things that Mr. Dusto said there, so. Just so you can see, I don't know what his pictures were.
Well, take
Show
it,
the property line
you
here.
feel free to look at them if you want.
Show what I wanted to see. So the rock wall right here is my line there. Here's the forms for the concrete around the bottom. There used to be parallel boards that ran along there, but those were removed.
What is
and
this
pulled
structure
back.
I'm looking at?
This is their,
Okay.
you can see in the front here, the forms extend out 3 to 4 feet in front of the building.
What
So it
forms
is
are those?
his concrete forms that he's got, and they go out at least 3 feet in front of the building there. So it's not just within the footprint there. And those are just in the backyard of transmissions and engines.
But that, he
transmissions,
stated that's all being stopped. I don't.
Right, no, I'm just-
I understand this.
Yep.
But this is,
This, yeah, it was
No,
just
this
something
just
that you
goes to
had.
the
Okay.
betterment of
All right.
the neighborhood here as well there. So
yeah.
the forms for the cement do actually extend out in front of there. I haven't been on their property, but you can clearly see when I walk in my backyard, they jut out in the front there. The reason why it looks like that, where there's a 1.5 foot gap, is because last fall, they started on this process with no permits, right? So all of this was going to be done with no permit. So they knew full well that you required permits. So
When he's done, you can go back up and.
pretty
address-
sure he knew full well he was going to require permits for it. He does this for a living, he built houses and everything. He's a smart man, like I said, talented man and everything. But this also goes to show you, this was all done under the cover of night here with no permits, doing everything, rushing to get it done before someone could find out. So
Wow.
all this excavation
Speculative.
work was done with no permit. They were supposed to have a permit for a ditch. Patty stated that they required a permit for the ditch that they dug that went down and feeds into a stream that goes into the Saco River aquifer there. So that was also part of my concern. Transmissions laying there feeding oil that went into a stream, that flow into a stream that goes behind both of our houses that feed the Saco River.
Okay. Now, I don't want to rehash anything you said before.
No, I'm just
but if
going
you
to
wanna
respond to a few things
If you
that-
want to respond to what was
Yeah.
said, you can certainly
I
do
missed a
so.
chance to ask you and I had my hand raised and now I can't remember what I was going to ask with something
That's why you
there.
write stuff down.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't hear what section she was referencing there. But yeah, so the 4.2C3 that she thinks is applicable here, and it's not because it's expanding the nonconformance of the use or structure. Again, the footprint of it is expanding it there. It's going to be turned in from a shed into a full-blown garage like that, so I believe, and in my experience with dealing with codes and everything, and state of Maine law, that certainly does apply to it there. The next thing here, I had scratched through, she was going through pretty quickly here. Yeah, she brought up all the things that you would have to review if you agreed with what I said. Well, change the law then. Go to the selectmen and get it changed so that you don't have to, because right now, per the law, that has to be followed. You can't just pick and choose. This is the United States of America. We have a constitution. There are laws under the home rule law in the state of Maine where towns are allowed to make their own laws. Towns are allowed to, but they cannot make them so that they are less lenient than the state of Maine's. And you cannot just make up a law without it going through the legislative body, which is the selectmen, having it ratified by a vote of the town or all the selectmen, and having those powers distributed and stating who gets those powers. Now again, she does not have the powers that she's claiming that she does. It's quite clear, and I'm sure that the town lawyer, if they read it, can fill her in on that. As far as the camps with the non-conformance and everything, you're allowed to do up to $1,000 worth of repairs onto a house at a time, correct? So you can put your new window in, then you go on to the new door and this and that. That's how you're allowed to do upkeep and general maintenance on a non-conforming building. And that's why it's set that way for $1,000, so that you're not turning a shed into a gentleman's club, into a garage, into a racetrack with a horse barn and everything. That's why there's a small thing that you're allowed to do. You're given the freedom to do that, up to $1,000, without even talking to her. No permit required. Anything beyond that, you get into the permits, you get into the setbacks, so it's your choice. You can do that up to $1,000, or you can deal with the regulatory process and the laws that are not being followed right now. Again, the 42C3 there states for restoration and replacement. That was, Mr. Blyer and I had a conversation about that, and with his background in real estate, he was really pushing for it, and then he came to the realization that the restoration and replacement part of that means that that building must have had to have been destroyed in order for it to be restored or replaced. A simple putting in a new window is not restoration or replacement or anything like that. That's new stuff going on there. So the restoration and replacement that she's just kicking out of the ordinance completely, not even taking into account, which is illegal in the state of Maine again. You have to take in every single part of the ordinance. You don't get to cherry pick and say, with any law, whether it's a dog being left outside where it's allowed to be on a 16-foot leash, has to have food and water, and a house. If it has food and water, that's not good enough. It has to meet all the criteria, you don't get to go.
Yeah.
And that's for every single state of law, state of Maine law that's written.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That's it? Did you want to go back up and say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the form we put up for the slab. And this, again, was part of the project before we were informed that we had to stop because of the appeal. So in talking to a concrete person, I went outside of the poles by that much, but my wife's on the three sides, the back and the two sides, because in talking to a concrete person, he thought it'd be best that we wrap the cement around the poles, which was this far, all right, 2.5 inches.
Okay.
The front of it, we extended a bit further, but after talking to, finding out about the appeal, our intention was to shrink that down and bring it down to the exact
Yeah,
foot.
you'll have to cut that off.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, I mean, that was our intent. We didn't do anything because we were told to stop, so we left everything where it was. We were gonna shrink it, and I said, it didn't make sense to even do anything until we found out what your decision would be here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I go back up?
Only if it's new information.
It's just on this, so that's it. You stated earlier you didn't want to go into what ifs. Well, this is a what if. As in the condition that it's in right now, it's 3 feet beyond it. What if he cuts that back? What if he doesn't, though?
That's up
So
to,
again,
that's up to Patty
and
to
so-
make sure.
Right, but so right now, the information that you have is that
Yep.
it's bigger because it's 3 feet out.
Understood. Yep, okay. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak? Seeing no one, I'm making a motion to close the public portion of this so we can take this up for discussion. All those in favor? Okay. Any open discussion on this?
Well,
I think Patty's done her job. I think she's done this before. This is not the first time. She knows the town. She knows the regulations. I don't think she went out of her bounds issuing this permit. She did do the stop when she found out about the business. I don't think these people are building this to all of a sudden create a business inside of it or be deceitful about it, as it was implied. I understand why he brought this to the appeals board. As far as I'm concerned, Patty did her job.
Okay?
I honestly think that it's changing the entire building. It's changing it from one thing to something completely different, that the use of it is going to be something different. So I am,
It's not expansion. I just wanted to make that point if I could. Changing is not expanding. Who is this?
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
ignore that comment.
When we're talking about, she had mentioned restoring or replacement, and that makes sense if you're just going to change kind of what's already there. But we're making it into something completely different. Right now, it's for storage. You're able to do whatever you've been doing with it. If we move forward with it, it is now an actual solid building that could be turned into, that has a different
Certainly a different look.
conformity to it. So it's not fixing maybe what's not quite working right, it's making it it's a building, a solid building. That's my feeling on it.
So you believe it should come before the appeals board if they want to turn it into a garage?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Is this building closer to Mr. Hamilton's than the actual house is?
Yes.
Yeah, he said it's
That's-
2 feet from the property line.
But the thing is, it's been there for, it's been that way when he bought the
I
land.
understand that, but you're making changes
Doesn't
to
matter, it's
a
still 2 feet from your property line.
non-conforming structure that is closer than the existing building that they live in, and that's where I'm having the problem.
Okay. Does everybody feel it's, you ready to vote? Or do
Under
you,
one more thing, that we are not all gonna live forever. And if that house ever comes up for sale, a finance company is gonna throw the Hail Mary at it because of that structure being there, which is in non-compliance with the state laws. Because it is attached to that property.
But it's not attached to the house.
Doesn't matter.
And the thing,
Any structure that is on that property is in question, and finance companies will not touch it.
meaning what? If it gets converted to a garage?
Correct.
A finance company's gonna go in and say, no, we're
The
not
more
gonna
you
finance
do to it,
They're not
the
gonna
more
finance
you
it?
do to it, the bigger the pain.
I don't think so.
I know so.
I think it increases the value of the property. I think. it
I'm
makes
not
it look
saying that, but the problem is when it comes to selling and financing, finance companies are very fussy.
okay, all right.
I think the building's been there. It's been there since.
I'm not saying it hasn't.
And I don't see the issue with.
But I don't
them
feel that-
closing it, the existing, staying exactly the same footprint, everything's the same, they're gonna put walls up, put a door up. To me, that's not, tearing it down and rebuilding it.
Okay. If we're ready to vote, or we can table it for another date if you need to think about it. I'm ready to vote.
Make sure that I
He's
vote
ready to vote.
appropriately.
You're ready to vote.
I am, are you?
Yeah?
Okay.
No pressure.
So before we come back and do the vote, let's be clear on what we're voting for.
Thank you.
The applicant for administrative appeal wants us to grant his appeal to stop the building permit.
To stop.
So a yes vote is for Corey Hamilton and grant his appeal. That's what a yes vote will mean. Do you understand that?
Yes.
A no vote means Patty's building permit stays in effect,
Okay,
all right?
yep, thank you.
And for this appeal to pass, you need a majority, is that correct, Patty? So 3 or 4 of us will have to vote yes. If it's 2 against 2, the building permit stays in effect.
So if we vote yes, everything stops, and they have to rethink what they're gonna do to that building?
You vote yes, you are voting in favor of Corey.
Okay,
But if they vote yes, they can appeal it while the
Sure.
appeal's going on.
I'm just talking about what
Right,
our-
But they can continue doing the build all they want. Because you don't pull the, you're not gonna pull the, Patty, right? You're not pulling the permit until a judge says, stop.
Right,
So if this goes through the court for a year, 2 years, their building will be done.
right. A no vote means we're backing away from this, and whatever happens, happens. If we vote yes, we're voting for Corey's appeal.
So his appeal would be that, hypothetically, that the building permit would be pulled?
I believe so.
It is gonna be, okay.
I believe so. Because if we voted it, we're saying Patty made a mistake. A yes vote means we believe Patty made a mistake. That's what administrative appeal is. What happens after that,
I was gonna say, it doesn't, I mean, they're not gonna.
it just means we've moved it from our board.
And turn it over to
And it
somebody
goes
else.
to who?
I don't know, don't care,
Yeah.
It goes to court, okay.
okay? I just want to make everybody understand what we're doing as a board.
Okay, yep.
A yes vote means you're voting with Corey,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
All right, at this time, I would like to vote, if everybody's okay with that.
Yes.
So, in the application for administrative appeal for the decision by Patty McKenna, do you favor Corey Hamilton's appeal? If you do, raise your right hand. 2 for, 2 against.
So it stays.
Okay, if you disagree with Corey, raise your right hand. Okay. What that means, it's a tie, which as far as I'm concerned, means the application for administrative appeal has been denied, as far as the appeals board goes. Okay? All right. At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing as far, with regard to the Corey Hamilton application. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that is closed. We're going to move on to other business. Approval of bills. We already signed for that. We agreed to pay the Portland Press Herald bill. All those in favor of paying that bill, raise your right hand. Okay, that's been approved. And the last item is we have half a dozen magazines of the main town and city publication for anybody of the board that would like to read them. And I'll set them right here. Right here. When you read them, you can just pass them on to the next meeting or bring them back to Patty. And it talks about the stuff we're supposed to be intelligent on.
Okay. I'll take these and I'll get them back to Patty.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Is there any other business that the board would like to discuss tonight? Okay. At this time, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Raise your right hand if you agree with me. This meeting is adjourned.